Narrator: have you ever wondered what you'd do if neighbors tried to steal your family's legacy? Today, I'm sharing a story that'll make your blood boil and your heart race. It's about what happens when entitled homeowners think they can take what doesn't belong to them. But first, if stories about standing up for what's right resonate with you, please hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to me. Narrator: picture this. For generations of honest, hard-working family history stretching across hundreds of acres of God's good earth, rolling fields that have fed families, a gentle creek that's witnessed countless sunrises, right in the heart of it, all a bridge. Now, this wasn't just any bridge. My great-grandfather built it with his own two hands during the Great Depression. Can you imagine? Times were so tough, but he took scraps from an old dismantled railroad and welded them together, piece by piece. Every rivet, every beam a testament to American ingenuity and determination. For decades, for generations of our family, crossed that bridge every single day, bringing in the harvest when the corn stood tall, weathering storms that would make city folks run for cover, living the kind of authentic life that's becoming rarer by the day. Narrator: but you know how it goes, progress, they call it. About 6 years ago, everything changed. Across from our southern fence line, bulldozers arrived. Soon, what used to be open land became something else entirely. They called it Whispering Oaks Community, though. I never saw a single oak tree on that land. Just row after row of identical houses, each with their perfectly manicured lawns that probably got more chemicals than my crops ever did. At first, I thought, live and let live. Their world was block parties and newsletter committees. Mine was morning chores and cattle auctions. Two different ways of life, you know? I figured we'd coexist just fine. I was wrong. Narrator: it was one of those perfect spring mornings when the air still carries that fresh, clean smell. I was just finishing up my coffee on the porch when I saw them coming up my drive. 3 people in business casual clothes looked like they'd stepped right out of a real estate brochure. The leader, this fellow named Todd, had one of those practiced smiles that never quite reaches the eyes. You know the type. TODD. Good morning, sir. Beautiful day, isn't it? I'm Todd, president of the Whispering Oaks Community Association. These are my fellow board members, Sarah and Jim. Narrator: I set down my coffee cup, already feeling that knot in my stomach. Farmer, morning. What can I do for you folks? TODD. Well, we're here with what we think is a fantastic opportunity for mutual benefit. You see, our residents have noticed your charming old bridge, and we were wondering if we might discuss establishing a shared easement. Narrator: shared easement. Those words hit me like a cold slap. This bridge, my great-grandfather's bridge, they wanted to use it like some kind of public thoroughfare. Farmer, that bridge is private property. Todd has been for 90 years. Your community has perfectly good roads. TODD. Oh, we know. But think about it. Our residents could save nearly 12 minutes on their daily commute. And we'd be happy to help with maintenance, maybe even some improvements. Narrator: the audacity of it took my breath away. Here they were, asking to use my family's legacy as their personal shortcut. Farmer: the answer is no. That bridge serves my farm, my family, and no one else. Sarah, don't you think you're being a little selfish? It's just sitting there, underutilized. Narrator: underutilized. As if 9 decades of family history, of honest work, of connection to the land somehow didn't count because they couldn't see the value. Farmer, folks, I'm going to ask you to leave my property now. This conversation is over. JIM. Typical. Some people just can't think about the greater good. Narrator: I watched them walk back to their pristine SUV, and I thought that was the end of it. How naive I was. Narrator: you know that feeling when something's brewing? When the air gets heavy before a storm? That's exactly how the next month felt. It started with the letters. Oh, the letters. Each one more official looking than the last. Each one pushing harder. Official request for easement rights. Notice of pending community vote. HOA resolution regarding shared infrastructure. Can you believe it? They were voting on my property, my family's land. As if democracy worked that way, as if a group of neighbors could just decide to take what belonged to someone else. But the letter that really got my blood boiling came on a Thursday. I still remember because I was coming in from checking the cattle when I saw that thick envelope with legal notice stamped across it. Narrator, the Whispering Oaks Community Association hereby declares its intent to claim shared stewardship of the southern acreage, including all access points and infrastructure improvements. Single, quotes long pause, they wanted half my farm. Not just the bridge, half my farm. Land that my great-grandfather had worked, that my grandfather had expanded, and my father had fought to keep during the hard times. They thought a vote in their little community center gave them the right to take it. Narrator, that night I sat on my porch with that letter in my hands, and I thought about my great-grandfather. During the Depression, when people were losing everything, he found a way to build something lasting. With his own hands, with salvaged materials, with nothing but determination and love for his family. I thought about my grandfather, teaching me to drive that old Ford tractor across that very bridge. I thought about my father, who worked 2 jobs to keep this place going when times got tough. I thought about every sunrise I'd watched from this porch, every storm we'd weathered, every harvest we'd celebrated. And I knew with every fiber of my being that I wasn't going to let a group of entitled strangers take that away. Not without a fight. Narrator, welcome back, friends. If you're just joining us, you're about to hear about one of the most outrageous attempts at property theft I've ever witnessed. In part 1, we met the Whispering Oaks HOA group of entitled neighbors who decided they wanted to take half of my family's farm, including a bridge my great-grandfather built with his own hands. During the Great Depression, their letters had escalated from requests to legal threats. They'd voted to claim shared stewardship of my land as, if a community meeting could, somehow erase for generations of family ownership. But what happened on May 17th at Wudan in the morning? That's when they showed me just how far they were willing to go. The dawn raid, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Narrator, you know how some mornings just feel different. The air was still, almost too quiet. When I was jolted awake by the sound of metal clanging against metal, my dogs were going absolutely crazy, and these aren't lapdogs, folks. These are farm dogs who know the difference between a raccoon and real trouble. I threw on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and headed toward the bridge. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. 6 people. 6 grown adults standing at my locked gate at 5:17 in the morning with bolt cutters in their hands. And leading them, still wearing a press shirt like he was heading to a board meeting, was Todd. Farmer, what in the Sam Hill do you think you're doing on my property? TODD, we're exercising our community's legal right to access shared infrastructure. Narrator, legal right. Those words still make my blood boil. There I was, in my pajamas and boots, facing down 6 trespassers who thought they could steal my family's bridge under cover of darkness. Farmer, this is my bridge on my land. You have no rights here whatsoever. Sar, actually we do. The board voted. This infrastructure serves the greater community now. Narrator, the greater community. As if my great-grandfather built this bridge for their convenience. As if for generations of my family were just caretakers until they decided they wanted it. Narrator, now. I want to be clear about something, friends. I'm not a violent man. Never have been. But standing there, watching these people with bolt cutters about to destroy my gate, something primal kicked in. Narrator, I wasn't pointing it at anyone. Let me make that crystal clear. But the sound of a shotgun being cocked echoes across a creek bed in a way that gets everyone's attention real quick. Farmer, drop those cutters. Now, narrator, 6 sets of bolt cutters hit that steel bridge like a symphony of surrender. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Todd's plastic smile disappeared. TODD, you can't threaten us. We'll sue you for everything you've got. Farmer, you're trespassing on private property with tools to commit destruction. You've got 10 seconds to get off my land before I call Sheriff Dalton. Narrator, They backed away, but slowly, like they still thought they had some kind of moral high ground. As they retreated toward their little subdivision, I could hear them muttering about lawsuits and unreasonable behavior. Unreasonable behavior. I'll tell you what's unreasonable: showing up at dawn with bolt cutters to steal someone else's property. Narrator: Sheriff Bill Dalton and I go way back. He's known me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, knew my father, respected my grandfather. When I called him at 5:30 that morning, he didn't question a thing. 20 minutes later, Bill was standing on my bridge, shaking his head at the whole situation. Sheriff Dalton: these city folks just don't understand rural property law, do they? They think an HOA gives them powers outside their own little kingdom. Narrator: Bill documented everything. The bolt cutters they'd dropped, the damaged lock, witness statements from my neighbors who'd seen the whole thing. He filed an official trespassing report and promised to have a word with the HOA board. Sheriff Dalton: don't worry about this, friend. If they come back, we'll handle it properly. Narrator: I felt better having the law on my side, but deep down I knew this wasn't over. People with that level of entitlement don't just back down because a sheriff shows up. Narrator: boy, was I right. What followed was 3 weeks of the most systematic harassment I've ever experienced. First, they started calling my land community property in their neighborhood newsletter. Can you imagine? They were literally telling their residents that my farm was available for their recreational use. I started catching strangers on my property almost daily. People fishing in my creek, walking their dogs through my fields, kids riding bikes on my farm roads. When I'd confront them, they'd say, but the newsletter said this was community space. Then came the petition. Oh, this was rich. They circulated a petition claiming that my refusal to share natural resources was environmentally irresponsible. These are people who spray their lawns with more chemicals in a month than I use on my crops in a year, and they're lecturing me about environmental responsibility. But the final straw-through thing that made me realize these people had declared war happened. On a Tuesday night in June, I woke up Wednesday morning to find someone had spray-painted HOA land in bright red. Letters across the side of my barn. My barn, friends. The barn my grandfather built, where I've stored equipment and hay for 40 years. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a bridge or an easement. This was about power. They wanted to break me, to force me off land that had been in my family for nearly a century. Narrator: now, could have let anger consume me. Could have done something stupid that would have given them exactly what they wanted: a reason to paint me as the unreasonable neighbor. Instead, I did what my father taught me to do when facing bullies. I got smart. And I got help. I hired a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but Sarah Mitchell, a woman who specialized in property rights and had a reputation for not backing down from bullies. When I told her the whole story, her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Sarah Mitchell, they picked the wrong farmer to mess with. What they're doing isn't just harassment, it's a calculated attempt at property theft. We're going to make them regret every letter they sent. Narrator: Sarah was thorough. She documented every incident, every letter, every act of trespassing. She filed complaints with the county, contacted the state attorney general, and prepared for what she called the most open and shut property rights case I've seen in 20 years. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. Narrator: by midsummer, the HOA had filed their lawsuit, demanding half of my southern acreage and permanent bridge rights. They claimed adverse possession and implied easement, fancy legal terms that basically meant they thought they could steal my land if they wanted it badly enough. But here's what they didn't count on. Friends, the law is on the side of people who actually own their property. And Sarah Mitchell, she was about to prove it in the most spectacular way possible. Narrator: welcome to the final chapter of what might be the most outrageous property theft attempt you'll ever hear about. If you're just joining us, make sure to watch parts 1 and 2 first. This story gets better when you know the full journey. So far, we've watched the Whispering Oaks HOA escalate from polite requests to dawn raids with bolt cutters. They've trespassed, harassed, vandalized my property, filed a lawsuit claiming they owned half of my family's farm. Today, you'll hear how justice was finally served. But not before they tried one last desperate act of revenge that backfired spectacularly. Narrator: the courthouse that morning felt like something out of a Western movie. On one side, the Whispering Oaks HOA board, dressed to the nines with their high-priced attorney who looked like he'd never set foot on a farm in his life. On the other side, me in my best Sunday clothes, my lawyer Sarah Mitchell with a briefcase full of evidence. And for generations of legitimate property ownership, narrator, their lawyer went first, and friends, the arrogance was breathtaking. He strutted around that courtroom like he'd already won, making arguments that would have been laughable if they weren't so insulting. HOA lawyer, Your Honor, this bridge connects to a public county road, making it naturally accessible to the community. The defendant's selfish hoarding of this infrastructure deprives hardworking families of reasonable access. Narrator: selfish hoarding of my own property, built by my own great-grandfather. HOA lawyer: furthermore, we have photographic evidence of community members utilizing the creek area, establishing a pattern of shared use that supports our adverse possession claim. Narrator: those photos, they showed people trespassing. They were literally using evidence of their own illegal behavior to justify stealing my land. But then Sarah Mitchell stood up, and friends, what happened next was beautiful to watch. Sarah Mitchell: Your Honor, let's address what we're really dealing with here. The plaintiffs are asking this court to ignore nearly a century of clear, documented ownership because they find their commute inconvenient. Sarah A.H. Mitchell: first, their adverse possession claim. The law requires continuous, open, and hostile use for at least 10 years. This HOA has existed for 6 years, and their so-called use has been sporadic trespassing that my client has consistently opposed. Narrator: she was just getting warmed up. Sarah Mitchell: second, their implied easement theory. There is no easement, implied or otherwise. The subdivision plat clearly ends at their fence line. No deed, no contract, no legal document grants them any rights whatsoever to Mr. Johnson's property. Narrator: then came the moment I'll never forget. Sarah pulled out a folder thick with evidence. Sarah Mitchell: Your Honor, these photographs they've submitted as evidence of community use are actually evidence of systematic trespassing. Each person in these photos was on private property without permission. Rather than supporting their case, they've documented their own illegal behavior. Narrator: the HOA lawyer's face went white. He tried to interrupt, but Sarah wasn't finished. Sarah Mitchell: finally, Your Honor, this case represents something deeply troubling. A group of neighbors who decided they wanted something that didn't belong to them, and when the owner said no, they launched a campaign of harassment, trespassing, and legal intimidation. This court should send a clear message that property rights matter in America. Narrator: the judge didn't need long to deliberate. In fact, he seemed almost offended that this case had wasted his court's time. Judge: this is one of the clearest cases of frivolous litigation I've seen in my 20 years on the bench. The HOA has no legal claim to Mr. Johnson's property, his bridge, or any portion of his land. Judge: furthermore, their pattern of trespassing, harassment, and attempted destruction of private property amounts to a coordinated campaign of legal bullying. Any future attempts to access Mr. Johnson's property without permission will be treated as criminal trespass. Narrator: I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Justice had prevailed. My family's legacy was safe. But friends, if you think that was the end of it, you don't know HOAs very well. Narrator: 1 week. 1 week of peace was all I got before they tried their nastiest trick yet. I woke up that Tuesday morning to find a bright orange sign staked just outside my fence line. In big bold letters, notice: unsafe structure ahead, bridge condemned. Can you believe it? They'd filed a false safety complaint with the county, hoping to get my bridge shut down. If they couldn't steal it, they'd try to destroy it through bureaucracy. But here's the thing about having a good lawyer. Sarah had anticipated this exact move. Sarah Mitchell, don't worry. We filed all the bridge documentation with the county engineer 2 weeks ago. This is just desperation. Narrator: she was right. The county inspector arrived the next day, a professional engineer who'd been inspecting bridges for 30 years. County Inspector, Mr. Johnson, I've got to say, this is one of the most solid private bridges I've ever examined. Your great-grandfather knew what he was doing. This thing could last another century. Not only did the inspector clear the bridge with flying colors, but the county fined the HOA $5,000 for filing a false safety complaint. Their little revenge plot had backfired spectacularly. Narrator, but the harassment didn't stop there. Oh no, these people were persistent. I'll give them that. Drones started flying over my fields, clearly photographing my property for who knows what purpose. I received fake fines in the mail for everything from agricultural noise violations to aesthetic disruption of the community. They even threatened to have my tractor towed when I parked it near our shared fence line. That's when I realized something important. They weren't going to stop until I made them stop. So I went on the offensive. Trail cameras went up around the entire southern boundary of my property. Every trespasser got photographed. And Sheriff Dalton's deputies started issuing citations faster than you could say property rights. I contacted Channel 7 News. And let me tell you, the story of HOA tries to steal farmers' land was like catnip to journalists. The public response was overwhelming. Hundreds of letters to the editor supporting property rights and condemning HOA overreach. Finally, we filed a civil harassment suit against the entire HOA board. We documented every incident, every trespass, every act of malicious prosecution. The court awarded me $68,000 in damages and legal fees. $68,000 that came directly out of the HOA's budget money. That could have gone to actual community improvements. Instead of funding their war against a ball against a farmer. Narrator, you know what happened next? The homeowners of Whispering Oaks finally woke up. They started asking questions. Why were their HOA fees going toward legal battles instead of community improvements? Why was their board waging war against a neighbor who'd never bothered anyone? Why had they wasted over $100,000 fighting a battle they couldn't win? The next HOA election was a bloodbath. Todd and his entire board were voted out in a landslide. Several board members resigned in disgrace before the election even happened. The new board president, a retired teacher named Margaret, knocked on my door their first week in office. Margaret, Mr. Johnson, on behalf of the Whispering Oaks community, I want to offer you our sincere apology. What the previous board did was wrong, illegal, and shameful. It will never happen again. Narrator, they paid to have my barn repainted where their members had vandalized it. They sent a formal letter of apology to the county court. Most importantly, they amended their HOA charter to explicitly prohibit any future attempts to claim property outside their subdivision. Boundaries. Narrator, today, that bridge still stands strong. Every morning I drive my truck across those steel planks that my great-grandfather welded together nearly a century ago. My cattle still cross it to reach the north pasture. The creek still flows beneath it, carrying the same clear water it has for generations. But you know what? This experience taught me something important about America in 2024. There are still people who think they can take what doesn't belong to them, who believe that wanting something badly enough gives them a right to it. But there are also still courts that uphold property rights, sheriffs who protect honest farmers, lawyers who fight for justice, and communities that eventually do the right thing when they see the truth. Clearly, my great-grandfather built that bridge to connect his land to the world beyond. He never could have imagined it would one day become the center of a battle for the very principles this country was founded on. Property rights, individual liberty, and the idea that no one, not your neighbors, not a committee, not anyone can vote to take away what you've rightfully earned. Narrator, friends, if this story has taught you anything, I hope it's this. When bullies try to take what's yours, stand firm. Know your rights. Get good help. Never let anyone convince you that their wants are more important than your rights. That bridge will stand for another 100 years, God willing. And every time I cross it, I'll remember that sometimes, if you fight hard enough and smart enough, justice still prevails in America. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear that standing up to bullies is still worth it. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Until next time, keep standing strong, and God bless.